Hi everybody, happy week 2 of analysis of argument. I'm trying a different recording format to hopefully make both the quality of the visual as well as audio a bit clearer for you. First of all, I really appreciate you completing the introductions and course activities. Generally speaking, I try to grade pretty quickly, and you should expect to receive grades and feedback on your assignments within a week of their due date, so I will have that to you by Wednesday at the latest. Additionally, for this week, we are diving into the first chapter of the Ricci and Sillars book. I have the first chapter available on the front page of Canvas if you're not able to access the book right now. I'd encourage you to rent the digital copy or see if you can get a used copy either from the campus bookstore or someone else that you might know that's taken the class. So if you still have difficulty getting the book, let me know, especially if you're abroad or not able to access Amazon very easily. I think the ebook is a really good option to go with. So I want to use some time for this class today to talk through some of the key terms and concepts from the first chapter of argumentation and critical decision making. This is designed to be a supplement in addition to what you're doing for your own reading as well as the PowerPoints. So make sure that you're still doing the textbook and reading. Also know that you have your Chapter 1 activity and Chapter 1 reading quiz due this week. So let's talk through argumentation. When you hear the term argument, you probably think of two different sides arguing or fighting with each other. And one of the big questions you have to ask yourself is, why do people argue with each other? If people are arguing about which candidate that they should support for president or various positions on issues including abortion and a lot of contentious topics that are being talked about right now, why do we argue? According to our authors, the purpose of argumentation is to, quote, grant adherence of critical decision makers. By adherence, we mean that somebody adheres to or sticks to our argument or our set of beliefs. So if I were to tell you that the Pie had the best pizza in Salt Lake City, I would try to make an argument to convince you or get you to adhere to the belief that the Pie has the best pizza. So you, in that situation, are a decision maker. You're trying to evaluate different perspectives, and I'm trying to convince you why, of those perspectives, including places to eat like the Pie Hole and other pizza places in Utah, the Pie is the best place to go. So the purpose of argumentation is to help decision makers come to support your own point of view on a various topic. That's what our authors refer to as the ultimate purpose of argumentation, to get support for and ultimately to advance the goals you're trying to do by getting somebody to support your point of view on a topic. We see that this happens through the usage of claims. So you might hear three different types of claims: fact, value, and policy. A fact claim is trying to assert that something is true about the world. So for example, the sky is blue, my tie is red. Those are claims of fact because they try to say that something is observable or correct about the world. We also see the idea of a value claim. So a value claim tells us to hold something above something else. So for example, a value claim might say, issues of national security ought to be valued or prioritized over issues of personal liberty. That's a topic we see a lot of controversy over, surrounding things like surveillance of information, right? So a claim of value says we should put this thing over another thing. Finally, a claim of policy suggests that a specific actor should take a specific action. So for example, the United States federal government, actor, should raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, action. So these three types of claims are the ones that you most commonly see. And within that, you might see a subclaim. So within a claim such as we should value national security over personal liberty, we might say something like, as a subclaim, we should value wirelessly surveilling individuals' data. In addition to those things, you might see a proposition. So a proposition goes along with a particular policy claim, right? It says that we should raise the minimum wage. Maybe it says that we should enact a carbon tax or something like that, right? So it says a particular prescription of what you should do to solve a problem. A value, right? A value can be something like liberty, freedom, could be something, you hear all sorts of different values, right? Compassion, empathy. So something that we believe is intrinsically good or good on its own terms is something that we often equate to as a value. When we think about argumentation, it's also important to think about arguments as happening in different spheres. So there are 3 different spheres that the authors identify. The first is the personal sphere. Think about the personal sphere as your sort of decisions that you're making with your own head, right? Should I eat lunch as takeout or should I just go home, right? Or it might be your close family members or friends, so maybe you're deciding where you want to go after college. That's a debate you might have in the personal sphere. The technical sphere are more specialized settings that have people who are in and out of the group. So for example, a technical sphere might be a business meeting. It might be the Supreme Court deliberating over a case. It might be a particular organization or nonprofit that you're a member of. Those types of organizations are considered technical spheres because they're more specialized. Finally, you have a public sphere. And a public sphere is generally open to everybody, or much more broad than the other 2 types. So it might be something that gets posted publicly on social media, including Facebook or Twitter. Maybe it's a news article getting posted and available to the public. So a public sphere is generally much more open. And one of the key ideas is that these different spheres invite different arguments. So if you're arguing with your mom over whether or not you should go to grad school, that's a very different way of making an argument than perhaps writing an opinion piece to the public about why you should go to graduate school, right? So we use different types of claims and different types of appeals depending on the context or the sphere that we're in. We also see a lot of terms discussed in this chapter that will be discussed in much more detail later. The idea of a logical fallacy being an argument that has a problem, right? So maybe you're making a generalization about something that isn't true. We'll get a lot more later into the ins and outs of fallacies and making a strong versus a weak argument, right? Other things that are discussed in this chapter as some key terms is the difference between rhetoric and dialectic, right? So this gets back to the idea of the ancient Greeks. So rhetoric is very much concerned with trying to convince or persuade somebody. It's like being a used car salesperson and trying to say, hey, you should do this. You should believe my point of view. Meanwhile, dialectic views arguments and discussion as sort of helpful for gaining greater knowledge. So rather than trying to come to the correct or the right view or try to convince you, I see dialogue as important or valuable. So the Greeks criticized rhetoric because they thought it made the weaker argument the stronger and was just designed to persuade people, and praised dialectic because it was designed to really help us learn more about each other. But we see that both types of strategy use different arguments. So when you're trying to debate with your friend about the meaning of life and learn from your friend, that's very different from trying to persuade someone or convince somebody that the meaning of life is X, right? So those are some of the key terms that we get into for this chapter. A lot of these terms are discussed in a lot more detail later, including the different types of claims that are used, the usage of support and evidence to back up your key claims. Particularly when we get into chapter 4 and the Tolman model, we'll walk through a lot of the different elements and structure of an argument. For the time being, I'm happy to talk to you if you have any questions about any of these terms or questions about the chapter. Otherwise, best of luck this week. Feel free to email me if you need to, and best of luck with completing your assignments and working through this first chapter of the book.